Recently, I had a buyer client who traveled up here from out of state, and he was concentrated. He needs to buy a home to move his family into. Doesn't need to, but he wants to move to this area, being closer to family. That's usually a big reason, and it's a good one. But he wanted to move up here, and he was concentrating on new builds, new homes. In other words, something that had not previously been. In his mind, new is fresh, everything works. It's better that way, end of story. And I get it. There's a lot of people that buy new homes. It's about roughly 20% of the market, some years more, some years less. I know that after 2008, when the market crashed, a lot of your small builders, like 4 homes or less a year, just got out of it because there was no money to be made. They had to make a living. They went off and did something else. So as the market slowly came back, they didn't. So you're left with a lot of the large builders. This fellow came up, and that's all we looked at. He wanted to know who the builders were in the area, and he wanted to get the best value he could. So we're looking at a value engineer. You have a certain uniformity there with new homes within the builder. In other words, if the builder is, if they've got a certain number of models they build, or they build in certain areas, the thing is you can go from one house to the other. During the construction process, they're all going to look pretty much the same. The techniques they use, because of the subcontractors that they bring in to do stuff, the plans that they have, yes, there's going to be uniformity there, and things are going to look like that. Now, ordinarily on a resale, the very first thing we do is a home inspection, because we want to find out, is there a showstopper here, so that we can back out quickly if we're the buyer. And if we're the seller, it's just like, we want to get back on the market as quickly as possible. The showstopper may be something that the seller's got to deal with or disclose, or it could just be something that the buyer got cold feet, or they don't have the stomach for something they found, which is really, it's not that big of an item. But regardless, the seller wants to get his house back on the market as quickly as possible, and the buyer wants to be able to move on. Not so with a new home. A new build, especially if you order something that they've just broken ground or they haven't even broken ground, you're looking at anywhere from a few months to maybe better part of a year before the house is completed. And it has to have a final inspection by the county or the city to make sure that it meets code in all aspects. And matter of fact, they are doing on new builds, they would have several inspections throughout the build process. But the final one is for the purpose of issuing a certificate of occupancy, because until the builder has that, he can't sell the house to anybody. So they're going for that, and then once they do have that, they want to close as quickly as possible. Now, this particular builder that my out-of-state buyer is working with, in this case, it's you got 5 days to have it inspected by a home inspector of your choice, which is something that if the builder doesn't give it to you, you definitely ought to negotiate for it, because for this reason, there is no such thing as a perfect house, especially no such thing as a perfect new house. There's always going to be flaws. I do remember one time, this was another buyer, bought the house, went in to do the inspection after the fact, and the paint was so thin you could see primer in some areas. You could even see drywall because the paint and the primer were so thin. So that had to be corrected. But you've got a certain window of time there. Again, it's not at the beginning of the contract period. It's near the end, right before closing. For this reason, the builder, if it's an egregious enough thing and they can fix it quickly, they would get in there and do that. But at least in Virginia, state law says that you have to have a minimum of 1 year warranty on that house. So if you find anything wrong, it's the builder's responsibility to fix it. Now, how they go about this, some of them will take direct responsibility for anything during that year. And in fact, they've got a crew that goes through and, after they've done their punch list before doing the CO and going to closing, these are the people that would go back and probably work directly for the builder or work under the builder and take care of these little problems, okay? Other builders, they will use a home warranty company, and they'll have a special, new house home warranty kind of thing to go in and take care of these little problems. Like you might have a flaw in the flooring, or the hinges on kitchen cabinet come loose because they weren't tightened down properly, or who knows. There's there's all kinds of little niggling things, but they are covered under warranty. And again, this is why a lot of people like to buy new, because they get that warranty. Now, if it's a resale, previously used or lived in house, you can still get a home warranty, and a lot of people don't realize that. But they are, it's something you can purchase at closing. You could even ask the seller to provide it at closing, and then ownership of that warranty switches over to the buyer. It's the buyer's responsibility after that if they want to extend it. Typically these things run for a year, and they cover a lot of things over and above what your homeowner's insurance wouldn't cover, for instance. So it's like, it's a small thing. It would be repair. It could even be the HVAC or the refrigerator. I've seen home warranties deal with those things, and they're not so small. But things that you wouldn't necessarily make a claim or would be allowed to claim under your homeowner's insurance, you can get covered by the home warranty. And for a lot of people, that's peace of mind, because let's face it, they're going into a house they've never had before. They don't know what to expect. And not everybody is, handy dandy DIY person. They don't have the time or the inclination to want to fix it themselves. They just want it taken care of. So that's where home warranties come in. And again, they're used by buyers for resales, and also builders with their new product. The other thing too that strikes me about houses, because after you've been in this business for a while, you get to see houses of all ages and all different styles. And the thing that came to me, I hadn't been in this long, but that every decade seems to have its own predominant style of house. For example, what I refer to as the 3-bedroom brick rancher. I think that's a style that came about in the 50s. So it's very prevalent in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And indeed, Brent Hull, who's a historic preservationist and restoration expert out of Austin, Texas, he refers to that as the last real American home style. After that, he says what we have now is just a pastiche of, a little bit of this and a little bit of that and something else, and all jammed together. Again, he's steeped in history of architecture and residential construction. So he goes into all that sort of stuff. But be that as it may, you can see, like, for example, the floor plan where you've got a kitchen, dining room, living room. It's all one open space in the center of the house. And you have a primary suite on one end, and the other side you've got 2 bedrooms and a guest bath there. That we started to see in the 90s. You'll still see that. That's prevalent. That's a popular one, because you can have a house that's very livable, very usable, and very space efficient for about 1,300 square feet and up. So these can be constructed for not a whole lot of cost. The other thing I run into is, depending on the material and the construction technique, that'll give you an idea of when the house was built. Things like how the flooring is supported, what is underneath the main floor. Things like nowadays we're getting a lot of vinyl flooring made to look like wood, or engineered floors where things snap together, what gets referred to as a floating floor. And for me, in the houses I'm in and the things I did before I got into real estate, we were dealing with, plywood subfloors, or in some cases, 6-inch boards, laid diagonally, nailed down to the floor joist. And then you would have 3/4 inch tongue and groove wood boards laid down, have a tight wooden floor. There was a period during the 70s and 80s where everything was carpeted. I've been in houses where wonderful hardwood floors, and you've got carpet on top. The problem I have with carpet, one of the big problems is over time, if you have a nice hardwood floor underneath, dirt sifts through the carpet, and all that walking around just abrades the surface underneath. Now, hardwood floors have made a comeback, so you don't see carpet in, the big living areas or the great rooms like you used to. I remember one house I went into. House was built in 1910, but it had been renovated during the 70s, and it had carpet everywhere. It had this dark green carpet, not only in the living room, but also in the dining room, in the main hallway, in the bathroom, in the kitchen, in the laundry room. In fact, the entire, it was a 2-story house, both floors really, from front to back and left side to right side, totally covered in carpet. Again, I guess the saving grace was it wasn't shag. But, you can look at a house and tell pretty quickly when it was either built or when it was renovated because of the materials that are in there, the color scheme, the floor plan, the materials used, all of that stuff. The thing is, with every decade, you've got houses that have withstood the test of time, and you know that old saying, they don't build them like they used to. Here's the thing, if they built them right and they've been well maintained, then they will last. You can take a junk house, really, and you can fix it up and bring it back. There's some people who do that. There's a lot of people who see a house that say, oh man, that's a tear down. And to someone else, it's here's an opportunity to make it even better than it ever was. So again, it's in the eye of the beholder, but you can look at what's there, get a sense of when it was built. Home inspectors are going to tell you what's wrong with it because, trust me, I have yet to go into a house that's been inspected by a licensed home inspector that they didn't find something. There's always going to be something, and yes, the older the house is, the less standard maybe the materials or the construction techniques are. Certainly when you get before about 1940, things get a little more individual there, although materials and some of the techniques you'll recognize. But we get more and more standardization from about 1945, certainly after the Second World War, up to the present, and just got more and more standardized. The materials got more and more sophisticated, the techniques, all that. So again, there's charm, and then there's efficiency, and there's all this space in between. So keep that in mind when you're house shopping, and this is going to open up your perspective on what's available and what sort of house will work for you. So, you know, if you're set on a new home, they're, they cover the entire price range, and also build quality. The materials are going to be new and modern, but there's a lot of variation there. And if you want to get into resale homes, again, decade by decade, there's going to be a lot of differences, and I'm sure you'll find something that will appeal to you in your search for your next home. So anyway, just some thoughts. You know, if this means anything to you, leave a comment down below. Hit that like and subscribe button, and until next time,